Okay, we're going to show some of these sharp capture, live capture sessions. I'm going to actually show some screenshots first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to show, this is a screenshot from a capture I took. We can see the date, maybe somewhere when we save it, you can see that it was saved on 10/20/2018. I was taking some test shots of the Horsehead Nebula, and this is 68 frames, I'm sorry. You can see the frames down here. 68 frames were stacked. 3 frames were dropped, and this was all stacked live as they were being brought in. And you can see there were a lot of frames during that night. Once I started Sharp Capture going, there was a lot that were dropped, a lot of frames that were being previewed and gone through. But during this process, 68 frames were stacked for a total of 9 minutes and 4 seconds. Now, this is some things on the SharpCap. I was using SharpCap version 2.9. There's actually a 3.0 and a 3.2 other versions that are out there. The newer version 3.2 has some interesting features. I'm going to show that in a minute. You can see when this thing was, I basically captured, I probably hit save down here, and then this was saved, and it gave me the directory location where it saved it. So what's the important thing about this is you can see here there's a save individual frames. I can save individual frames. I'm saving as PNG files right now, which will be raw PNGs that I can stack later. I'm also doing aligned frames, and I hit a save here to save a TIFF. What's the advantage of that is when I'm gathering data, I can save a TIFF and then process the TIFF even while I'm gathering more data and see what I'm getting. And it's like they're already stacked live. So a couple things over here. If you look here, we have bit depth in the middle here. It says 21.1 bits of data. We have a maximum value of 2.1 million levels of brightness to darkness here in the pixel value. This is important when you're doing a live capture. I haven't tested 3.2 with a live camera lately, or yet. I've tested 3.0. I didn't really notice it with the live cap. I think this was fine with the live camera, but I wanted to go to 3.2 in the Pro version because I can actually stack from the folders images again and do like a live stack simulation, which is kind of cool, which means I can stack from any old other camera that captured, not just the ones that are supported by ZWO. So basically you can see there's some details. You can see the flame here, the horse head's hard to see, but this has not been processed. It's just a kind of a regular stack image. When it saves it, I'm saving them as TIFFs, and it saves them in a FITS wrapper with more than one TIFF. Since we have over 21 bits of data here, this is going to actually save more than one TIFF. If you try to open up with some programs, they're called 3D TIFFs, and they can't open them. So that's a screenshot. I'm going to show you a couple more shots here. Here you can see it's still doing screenshots, and here I had 12 minutes and 40 seconds, over 3 million bits of information. The reason I'm mentioning this is it's important when you're capturing. It's kind of cool to see how much data you're really getting, and you can see it live when as you're doing the stacking. If bad data comes in and is stacked in, your live save of your TIFF will be messed up. You're gonna have some bad data in there. You're gonna have to stack and post later. But if you want to get a quick and dirty, pretty decent intermediate image, and you don't want to spend a lot of time with stacking with Deep Sky Stacker or some other program, the live stack feature is a really great feature in SharpCap. So there's something that was overexposed. Here I am actually going in with the image later and playing with the horse head and changing levels actually in the histogram to try to get some detail out. So we're going to get out of this now and go back to our live session. What I'm going to do is I'm going to target M42 maybe here. I don't know. Let's see. Let me check here. Yeah, I'll target this 1019 M42 image. We're going to look at, this is actually what we're going to be going for, something like this. This is a basic image. I don't think there's a problem with this image. Let me see. Take a quick look at this for a minute. This is what 2 minutes got me. Yes, that's a basic image. That's what 2 minutes got me. And we're going to see how that works. This was with no curves. This one's coming out of the RASA setup with no curves. We can go for this or we can go for the horse head. It doesn't matter. But what we'll do is we're going to go over to SharpCap. I already have it running. So I'm going to bring it up. And what I have to do is I have to target with the 3.2 version, the Pro version, 3.2 and beyond, you have a different camera option feature. Let's look at the cameras up here at the top, and you can see the different cameras. We can, if I had a camera connected, you'd see the other cameras hooked up. But one of them is a folder monitor for cameras. If I select that, I come over here, it will give me folders. In theory, Let me select it now. I didn't select it. So now it gives me folders over here, a folder tab. Now I can't change the exposure because the image has already been captured. You can see I'm doing something over here earlier. Let me clear that out. Bring in the folder. And what is this? This shows me where the folder is. I can go in, I can look for the folder and select a different folder to capture from. So let me do that. Let me browse in and look at what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up a bit, go back to M42. I'm going to go back out of the 1025 capture date, go back out of all these things, go back to chart capture. We're going to go back to 10. We'll go back to 1019. No, we'll go to 10. Yeah, we'll go back to 1019, I guess. We're going to look at M42, and when I do a capture, a run on a bunch of captures and saves, they go into one folder. But then if I start it up over again, they'll go into another folder. So let's take a look at one of these and see if we can find the one we want. But here's a 4-minute stack of M42 in theory. Let's see what I got in. That's what I ended up with. But that's not being stacked right now. Let's go back and see. I really want the raw frames. So these were the raw frames that were saved. They're PNGs. So basically, I just want to select this raw frame folder and simulate the stack. You can see I got up to 4 minutes here to get that image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say raw frames, open that. And when I open it, it's going to open these PNG files. Now, when you open it, the PNG files are black and white, but there's a Bayer matrix decode for the color camera because this is a color camera. So I'm opening these files in theory. I hope maybe I have to select this and say open. All PNG files. And now it's going to bring in the first file. And we're going to come back and look at this. You can see I have a play button here. And I'm looking at the first file. And it's giving me a frame rate. And I can play and start to record these images. Now, I'm going to hit play for a minute and see what they look like. So we're playing these images. There's quite a bit of data in these. They're fairly bright. Let me go back to the beginning here. Pause it and start at the beginning again. Now, what I want to show you is that this thing actually right now, I'm going to stop this, pause this live capture session because we're in a live stack. I'm actually going to turn off live stacking for a minute and open it up again. And let's look here. So if I hit play, you're going to see these images. This is what they look like when they're coming in. So you can see something that went by. So we're going to go back and start again, pause it, and start again. But what happens is this image, see it's kind of overexposed. We're going to get a very bright image. The core is blown out. That's okay. I'm going to hit live stack, and I'm going to go into this thing and start to do a stacking process. And so right now we're starting to stack. If I clear it and say resume, it'll start from the beginning, although I'm starting on the 5th frame, frame 5 here. So let me go back to the beginning and hit play and watch this thing run. We'll see what happens. Now there's a couple errors in this live stack process. Let me hit resume. Get this thing to start going. And you can see it's just taken one frame and stacked it. It looks like it's ignored 18 so far. It's probably talking about the whole session. So it's stacked some frames here. It's going through its stacking, and hopefully we'll get quite a few. And as it stacks them, it ups the exposure of each one down here, total exposure. The problem is with doing it from a folder is this exposure rate is wrong. It's not giving me an accurate amount of exposure. The exposure is based on the exposures of the seconds of the exposure, but this is giving me like a time. So there's a few errors in this this explanation replay, although it is doing a live stack. I stacked 7 frames so far, now 8 frames. And if I hit save, it will save these somewhere. A couple of interesting things to note is that this live stack right now is being called M42 PostStack Test. I can give it another name. I might want to pause it. Let me pause it, clear it, and start over. I'm going to start at the beginning, pause the playback. So I'm on the second frame of 239 frames. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to uncheck the save individual frames. You normally want this if you want to do stack post processing, but I don't want to copy these again over in the directory again. So I want to only save the frame when I say save. So it's doing a stacking process right now. It's already stacked 4 frames. This is about 20 seconds. Let me clear it again. And we're going to go back and start again. Okay, so, and I'm going to say go. So I'm saying resume. It's doing this M42 PostStack Test. It's starting to stack it. It stacked 2 frames. It's a little, it might be a little faster in this display. See the frames here, where it says 2. And as it's able to align them and stack them, it'll say how many are dropped or how many it's stacking. Looks like I'm having a lot of frames dropped here. Maybe my first frame was kind of wanky or something. We can look at our alignment tab and see these characteristics of our alignment. I can just decide the black level, how many pixel widths for stars that are aligned. I can turn on and off the highlight detected stars. You'll see like yellow and red dots go on and off for to highlight them. How many stars am I stacking on? All these good features. But the interesting thing is, one interesting thing is the histogram should update. I don't know if it's going to update now as we're doing this. These frame PNG files, it's on number 16 already. It's dropped most of them. You can see it's only stacked 2. Not really happy with that. We'll go back to status. We don't have much data here. I'm going to clear it, go back and start over, or quite a bit, just at least start over, play a couple frames and see what's going on here. We'll play a frame, we'll play a frame. Then I'm going to say clear. Something I would have to do with a live camera. And let this thing stack. So now it's stacked 2. Starting with number 5, as you can see, we're on number 6, number 7. It's stacked 3, so it's doing good stacking now. It's doing a bunch of stacking. So we're going to see the exposures. Now, are they 4-second exposures? Maybe. So maybe 5 would be 20. But why am I seeing 21 here instead of 20? Why am I seeing these numbers off? Well, the reason is it's adding time up for this process, and it's not really putting the true value on here, which is kind of a bummer in post. The other thing that's kind of odd is we get stacking time, we get the bit depth level here shown, but we don't get the true max value of the pixels. And the other thing is I normally don't use Sigma clipping. I'm trying this. I tried that on the last test. I'm going to clear this and try it again. Start up again, pause it, and clear it. Okay, clear it. I'm going to go back to the beginning again. Notice how this, it's like I'm restarting the camera over again. Going back in time here. Hit pause. And I'm going to change the Sigma clipping to default. Let's see what happens with that. Maybe it'll help this thing better. So here we go. And I'm going to hit go. We're on the first frame. Let's see if it'll align on it. Hopefully it will, but maybe it won't. So hit play and let it go at it and see what happens. So now it's playing the frames. And it doesn't like the first frame as a start point. It looks like it's ignoring other frames. I'll clear it. I'll start out in a few frames to see what happens. Maybe we get a better deal here. And have it start up on frame 4 instead. So it stacked the first one. It stacked the second one. Although we're like on frame 9 already. So we've dropped about a half a dozen frames. You can see that a little plane just flew through here. That'll get added to the stack. Maybe it'll be averaged out. It might still appear. I think with default stack it doesn't get averaged out. It may be a permanent part of this picture. So I probably stopped, cleared, and restacked and started saving again to get those plane trails out. Just for the live stack, I would do that normally. So now as we're stacking, so what happens is if I don't want to save these individual frames and go back and post and I want to do the live stack and save a lot of space and a lot of time later post processing, I can get a very moderately decent, half decent picture in the live stack process. And when I get to a point where I have enough exposure, I have 14, possibly 4-second exposures. I believe these are 4-second exposures actually. So 15 4-second exposures would be what? A minute, right? So I'm already at a minute. This is 69 seconds. It's pretty close to reality, but it isn't completely reality. I'm seeing bit depths go way up here as it's packing in more data. But these values here are wrong here. Maximum pixel value isn't like 4800. It's like off by maybe a couple, maybe 100-fold. We're probably at 500,000 pixel levels, not 5100. I don't know if this is doing bytes instead or what, why the calculation is wrong. But it might, hopefully it's just a feature of the live version. It's nice to see that you have a million or 2 million or 4 million or whatever, maybe 10 million levels of pixel depth in your image, and you're going way over 20-bit, maybe you're 25 or whatever. And if you're 20-bit, it's more than 16 bits would be the bit depth that could be saved in a single TIFF. So if you're 20-bit, I'm already going to be saving 2 TIFFs. When I hit save, it's going to save 2 TIFFs in a FITS wrapper. It's going to be called a 3D TIFF. So for the sake of we got 30 images. We get to we're around 2 minutes right now actually, with 33 images if they're like 4 seconds each. So what I do is I'm gonna hit save here. We'll look at that image and hit save. We're gonna see it appear here where the image is. Here it is, and I'm gonna click on that and look at that image. It brings up that image, and you can see I have it in today's 1026. And we have M42 PostStack Test, and this is the long image, supposedly 142 seconds, but I know that's wrong. The camera settings that would tell you the information about the exposure doesn't have any information in it because I'm playing it back from the folder. If there was a way to capture that information and make this more accurate in doing it from a folder, that'd be nice to see the right data. But really, this is a live tool for getting data off of a live camera. So some of the statistics that you're getting from this are not right. So what happens is while I'm running this, while I'm doing a capture, and you can see I'm still doing captures. I got 46 things in the background. This thing is still, what I do is I open this up. I go to Nebulosity. I launch Nebulosity, which I already have launched. And I open and I locate the location of the TIFF. It's actually down here. 35 frames. It's 3:26 a.m. That's right now. So this is that stacked TIFF. It's a fit inside of a fit file. It's 93. See the size of it? It's 93 megs. So it'll even get bigger when if I jump over 24 bits and I go to 25 bits. It's going to save 3 TIFF files inside of this. So I just open this up. Nebulosity can open up and handle this 3D TIFF. Although a lot of programs on the PC that are affordable or low budget can't do that. So I'm opening this thing up. It's going to open it up, and this is the image that I have a stack of. Now there's two things I do. If it's underexposed, sometimes this might be heavily exposed, so it might not work. But if it's low exposure, meaning the frame rate's pretty low compared to the brightness of the object, I want to bring up the brightness. So the first thing I do is I go in and I say Digital Development DDP. It automatically guesses and brings up the levels in the fine details, and basically stretches your image out, gives you a lot more information. So I'm going to do that. Make this a little bigger here. And you can see it's done its little guess here. I'm going to say that's nice. You can also see that the star trails, or the trails of the satellite or whatever that flew through, are still there. And now this color is off because I'm using a light pollution filter. So I come here and I come down to adjust color background offset, and it tries to make the background black, the sky black. So that's what it's going to do. So now I've already got a basic image here, pretty good. And you can see this is from about a couple minute image of 4-second stacks for M42. Now what I'm going to do is I can either save this with those two settings and go to another program, which would be a great thing to do to go to Photoshop if you have the time and the money and you want to play with Photoshop, or I can use other programs and chain them together. So this is a pretty decent basic image. I can also do more processing inside Nebulosity, but I don't like to process too much Nebulosity. I need to learn more about it. I can do like basically curves and stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this file. I'll save this file as a TIFF, and I'm going to call this post, call this M42 post stacking from folder, test. All right, they're all tests. Make it a test. All right, and then I'm going to save it. So now I'm going to go and open that up in another program. I'm going to go in and find it here if I can. There it is, post folder test. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, and I have another program I launched by mistake, but we'll get rid of that, don't worry about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up, and I'm going to open it up in this Astra image, which is a cheap, quick and dirty way to do RGB imaging and do some basic editing, but it still doesn't have really good curves. It's still nothing like Photoshop. But I'm going to play with that a little bit, toy with that, open it up. It's another program another image I was working on. Basically, I can kind of minimize this a little bit, bring it down, grab that, image, and just drag it in here, and it'll get out of the way. In theory, I can do, well, let me try it the other way. Maybe another program's holding me up, trying to launch, and I'm going to get in there and try to get out of that. Okay, so stupid window, close this stupid thing. Oh, it's trying to launch the Litro app. I don't want that. Meanwhile, while all this is happening, let me go back to go to today. Go to the PostStack Test. We're going to come in here, and this is the one I just did. Open this up. In theory, the Astra image is going to blow up on me. Okay, there it is. So I brought it in. I can zoom in a bit. So this is our quick image. Now I can do some adjustments in here. I really don't have curves, which is kind of a shame. I can try to bring up the brightness a bit, make it brighter, and bring up the contrast maybe a bit, and toy with the exposure even. Try to see what kind of details we can get out of here. It's starting to look pretty good. Some extended stuff here. I can play with the gamma a bit, get some more details. So I'm getting more grain. So now I got an image. It's a pretty decent little image. You can see I have drop off because I don't have flat fields. Some drop off on the edges and stuff. I can toy with the, get even more exposure by toying with the histogram. I'm using the RGB so the colors won't shift that much. I'm getting a lot of dust, a lot of noise too as I do this. Is there another way to do this better? Playing with the histogram is a quick and dirty way to sometimes get your image changed radically. Just to get a basic image. Of course, if you go more to the right here on your center point, you'll get rid of some of the noise and you'll have a smoother image. And then you can also truncate the data, make it darker. Of course, you can play with black point and make it darker that way too. So you kind of toy around with it until you get what you want the look to be like. So I'll say this is pretty good. So now I'm going to save this, and basically, as you can see, I basically used one other program, and I have a basic image. I've used Nebulosity. I've done 2 mouse clicks, and I've done some adjustments in my editing program, and I've gotten, maybe with the curves or whatever, I've gotten a basic image, and I can post this. So I'm going to do is I'm going to save this, and I'll save this as TIFF M42 stack test Astra image 1. Okay, so that's quick test of about a 2-minute image capture, and I'm going to save that, and then I'm going to go in. I'm saving it as a TIFF image. I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some more tweaking with this, before I send it to my iPad to even tweak further, to get the image tweaked a little bit further. A lot of darkness in this, a little bit of detail here. It's not quite as good as dusty as I'd like it to be, but I'll just show you how the process works here. I go to, I'm going to go to something called, these two things. Oh, there's another thing I can do too. I can actually stack more than one image together, actually do different adjustments, and then do an HDR process. Let me do that real quick. Well, yeah, I'll do that real quick just for the heck of it. Although this is not, I'm going to go back to, let me go back to this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a darker one, although it's kind of bright, and I'll make a brighter version of this. All right, kind of noisier maybe. Maybe not with a histogram. We'll do it brighter another way. We'll zoom in. Let's just bring up the brightness a bit. Get rid of some of that black point, black level. So I'm getting more dust, right? And I can actually, for this one, I'm going to make it kind of radically stupid. I'm going to come in and bring up the greens. I'm actually color shifted, which you shouldn't do. It's kind of like doing a curve with different values of colors. I'm going to color shift it, bring in a lot of brightness here. Maybe down the overall brightness, but bring in the brightness of some colors a bit to get more of a, bring down the exposure a bit, but I'm doing it with the color channels. But as I'm doing that, I'm shifting the color a bit, which is not, that's why you should do RGB all at once, not. So I'm going to do that. That's a little brighter, a little more extended, but it's a lot noisier. So there's my brighter one right now, and I will save that. But before I save it, I'm going to apply it permanently. If I don't do that, it'll save the earlier photo. So actually, if I didn't do that in the other one might not have been saved with a change in it. So let me save that. I'm going to do is I'm going to save it. I'll save this as number 3. Check this out. I'm going to go back and get the other one too. You'll see there's some details in here in the middle. This picture might have some flaws in it. It was pointed out to me one of them did. This might have some flaws in it. This might have been the one that's flawed. It might have a bad frame that got mixed in. Some of these stars might not exist. They might be, I don't know if this is the one. This could be the one. Don't know. We'll check later. This could have a bad frame in it, but we'll find out later. But it's been stretched quite a bit. So I saved it. I'm going to come back here and do an undo. All right. And let me go to the folder real quick. It doesn't look like it saved it in the same locations. PostStack saved it in 1025 folders. But I can tell by looking at these here that these are the same, it looks like maybe. Yeah, these are the same. So these are not really different enough for my HDR process. So I'm going to go in again. I'm going to come in again, once again, and kind of play with this a bit. Brighten up a bit. Not too much. I'll make it darker. Put a few different changes in here. Actually, I'm going to go back to the RGB. Make this kind of a deeper image. A little deeper, a little darker. With some brightness. So you get some stuff out here. Some contrast. Some more exposure. And to liven things up a bit, I'll even add some saturation in it. Make it even more red, which is, so that's going to be my darker one. I'm going to apply that. Save that. And we'll put it in the same location. I'll move them. So I'm going to save this as 2. So now we have 2 different exposures. I'd be more careful in 20. Usually In Photoshop, I could actually do this a lot quicker. This is a cheap program I'm using on the PC, but in Photoshop, I could actually work this quicker and do a better job. So you're probably better off going to Photoshop and doing this, but this is kind of like the cheap person's way of going through it. So now we're done with this for now. I'm going to go back into these, into Sharp Capture and find the other images I just saved, which is these two, I believe. It's just today. Yeah, these are today. So these are the two I just saved. I'm going to cut these out of here. And come back and put them actually in the new test for today, today's date. Put them in here where they originated from. And so these are the two images. Now, so we can take a quick look at these. There's one. There's the other one. One's dimmer than the other, right? So there's one different exposures, the same image. So now I've created two images, but I've done it from the same source. So my stacking will be a lot easier. Now I'm going to go into Photomatix Pro, which is an HDR program that isn't for astronomy, but it works pretty good for astronomy. You can play around with it quite a bit. You have a lot of power. If it can align the images enough, if it does a good enough job, especially if you're using the same source images, you know they're aligned. Although I still leave the alignment routines intact. Photomatix Plus will do a good job. While this is happening, while this is loading up, I'm going to go back to the stack thing and see where we're at. We're at 233 frames, 16 minutes of exposure, quite a bit of exposure. I'll save another one here. It might be done. It's waiting for the next frame, so it's already done. So this is the max it can do. So we have 16 minutes of exposure. I'm going to save this. And this saved another one with a lot more detail, be a lot brighter, be a lot more detail, smoother and less noise possibly. But also could have errors in it because it's a live stack, and if it only rejected one frame, so anything that's messed up in there will get thrown in there. So let me close that for now. That's how the live stack works. We're going to go into this Photomatix Pro thing, and I'm going to load bracketed photos. And in this case, I can make this. Let me cancel and make this smaller. Half minimize. Load bracketed photos. So I just grab these two photos and drag them in, and say OK. And it will give me details on that. And it says that the EV spacing differences in the exposure values is 3 stops, which is fine. And I'm going to let it stack. Now I'm leaving this kind of like a default, like I'm telling it to reduce noise, I'm telling it to do all these things, I'm telling it to align, source align, all that. The alignment options I could turn off because these are already aligned, but because they're from the same source image. So it's a little trick to get more depth and more of an HDR look in your images. It's kind of a trick. Photoshop, if you treat it properly in Photoshop, you don't need to do all this stuff. So I'm really playing with a lot of different programs to kind of go through these different steps, and you can't back them out once you've gone through one step and you save it. I mean, you got to go back and then to process the same way. You have to do that. So now we're going to look at some of this photo. We're going to look at this, and I'm going to select one of my presets. Some of them I'm going to go through here and try to find a preset that's pretty close to give me what I want. Some detail, and not black and white, but some detail. We'll use this one, although it's pretty noisy. This one's less noisy. We'll use this one as smoother. This will be my basics to start with anyways. I'm going to use this as a natural fusion of the two images. Works pretty good. What I can do is I can go through this in close down this for a minute, and I can look at the different. I can look at the strength of the which image I'm going to merge in, right? And I can look at the brightness of the overall image, modify that, and shadow contrast. And there's other details here. Move this over a bit. We have white clip, black clip, so I can black clip this image more. I really don't want to. I can white clip the image more. Sometimes you can do an extreme move, and then I can bring up the midtones if I want, right? So I can bring in some detail. So I'm doing this to get an HDR kind of look. I can zoom in and see how it's looking in parts of the image. Am I getting what I want? You know, and I can do I can modify the color saturation a bit if I want it really bright. Might not be very scientific, but it'll look pretty cool. It'll kind of be eye-popping. So that's what I'm going to stick with for now. But there's a lot of noise, as you can see in this image. Now, these different programs will do different noise issues, deal with it. We're going to work on that next. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say, well, this is good enough for now. It's not that great, but it's a quick example, okay? And I'm not too happy with the color here. I'm not too happy with this here. It's quite a drop off here. It's not very bright. I might be able to hit that even later on the iPad and brighten up the whole thing. Sometimes my images are a little dark on the PC. People say you need to brighten them up. But there's a lot of noise in both. Notice that there's noise in here. So I'm going to save this. It's not a very good example, but it's a quick thing. And I'd say apply. Sorry. And it's doing it. Ooh, don't drop your mouse when you're doing this. So now it's doing the fusion and fusing my images together. And it's going to give me a result image I can look at. And I'm just going to say save it. I'll save it as a TIFF. And it's fused. It shows two pictures. It's saving in the same location. Save it. I can save it as a JPEG if I want to send out the JPEG to somebody, but I'm going to do more processing than this. So now let me go in and look at that processed one. Here's the fused thing. So there's the fused image. You see I've brightened it up quite a bit. Kind of like I've gone back and actually I've added a lot of noise with that brightness. I'm trying to bring up some details in here. Needed to get, the black levels are too deep here to get this in, but I needed a better centered shot. Maybe like a shot like this and another shot, process them the same way and then merge them together to get this in this NGC object here, both of them in frame easily. So now what I'm going to do is, you can see I have vignetting. I can't get rid of it. If I had a flat field, I can get rid of the vignetting. I can do a better process. So I'm going to take this image. I'm going to try to improve it even more. Go through different steps. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to use neat image noise reduction. And I like this. It's a little more work than some of like the turbo. There's something turbo noise reduction that they use, the imagers use, but neat image is pretty good if you don't over push it. So sometimes it'll add fractal noise or strange noise if you over push it. We're not going to do that though. We're going to, I guess I can just bring it down, grab this and say it's the source, open it, and here we go. Now here's the source. Now for M42, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to device noise profile. I'm going to let it auto profile it. It'll try to find some areas where there's not much stars, hopefully. Not too much noise. It's going to give me says that's going to be where noise is. Oh, alright, I'll accept that. Go to the noise filter thing. It's going to try to do an alt default filter thing, but I already have I have a filter I want to load. That's a mild filter for noise that I saved. All my filters aren't together though, but for M42 I put this together. Mild filter gives me some errors, I don't know why, but I'm going to zoom in a bit and see the results. Okay, and I can draw a square around it. You can see the noise versus no noise inside the square. So I can see how much of the noise I'm getting rid of, the grain and noise. That's a pretty good job. It's leaving some of the detail of, this stuff in here and getting rid of a lot of the noise. I might be able to even hit a little bit more aggressively, but I like to leave a little bit of noise for the detail in there. And there's other things in here. I'll just show you I have detail recovery on 55%. Artifact removal is enabled, but I don't really need that enabled. I can turn it off. It doesn't matter one way or the other. On noise level, I don't have much noise I'm pulling out of this image, as you can see. Luminance values. There's other things here. I'm using the highest quality. So this is what I'm accepting as my noise reduction. It's done a pretty good job, and as you can see, it leaves quite a bit of the details in. And if you need to recover the details, you can bring them back without as much noise doing this. I don't have edge smoothing on. I can turn it on and show you what it looks like. Kind of softens the image a little too much for my taste. I'm trying to keep the details in here. Makes it cleaner though. Smooths it up, right? So I did it. There's enable. There's smoothing. There's no smoothing. Okay. There's settings in there. So there's a lot of fine settings in this. You can see I'm doing high, mid, and low different. When I was doing edge smoothing, I was doing the high, middle, low version of it. You almost don't see a difference with this. High frequency, mid frequency, low frequency. I can do low frequency edge smoothing. Let me turn this on and show you what it would do. Does it really do much difference? Still an awful lot of detail. Wouldn't matter either way, but I'm going to turn it off. So now I've done a little bit of this, and what I do is I deselect this and I say I like this. Let's output the image. It's going to do a quick process of the whole image, save it, and now I've gotten rid of a lot of that noise. But I've kept a lot of the nebulous dust clouds and stuff in the image, which is what I want to do. So there's noise filters inside Photoshop you can use. I think they even have it from Neat. You can get the Neat image. Neat also has a thing for a noise reduction thing for video called Neat Video. Awesome noise reduction filter for video editing. It really can make your video look a lot higher quality and enhance the details in the video. Highly recommend it if you're into video editing. So now we're done. We're gonna save this. This is my end image. It's pretty decent looking now. As I back out, save this, and it's filtered. It just adds the word filtered on it. That's good. I'll save that as that. Of course, I want to save it in the right location. I am. Save it as a TIFF first. So I retain all the data, and then I can save it as a JPEG. So this here you see a image, and of course it looks better when it's zoomed in. When we get these corners that aren't really, the details isn't in the corners. It's better if it's zoomed in a bit. But here's a basic image, and I stacked it live, and this is what you can basically do. You know, in a few minutes with editing in the post, even while the stacking is happening in the background with your PC, you can have a nice intermediate image to share and show people. Then if you want to do the long version of stacking, try to get more detail and try to get a better image, you can always go that route. But I found this very good with a high quality, with a good camera that has good gain. And I'm doing this with noise pollution filter in the city. I'm getting pretty decent images. I'm really pretty happy with them actually, because my goal is really just to be pretty much, I'd like to do the great high-end astrophotography, but I just don't have the time. So I just want to get some quick intermediate photos easily, and I found that the RASA, the Row Ackermann Spit Astrograph, or Hyperstar system, in using live stacking can really get you there quickly. And here I am, you know, in 5 minutes I can get like a photo like this, you know, and in 10 or 20 minutes I can get a lot of depth, detail, something that's a fainter image, I can get something pretty good. And I've saved this, right? Okay, so now let me go out. And the rest is on the iPad, so I can't show you this right now. And this, that'd have to be another video. I can show you the iPad processing. I can toy around with it. The iPad, I can do other things. I can actually make it more artistic, interesting, but not scientifically accurate necessarily with the colors. And they aren't necessarily scientifically accurate here, but it's a pretty picture. And that's what I'm kind of into doing. And there's guys in the club that are more purists because they're scientifically accurate photos. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm just kind of in a hurry here, so I'm kind of like leaving some of that for the artistic aspect of it. If you're not doing a good job, just call it art. So let me close this down now. I'll minimize it anyways. And we can stop. Actually, we could open up this other one just for the heck of it. The Nebulosity. You can see I have quite a bit of detail in it. So this is what I started with in Nebulosity. Give me a rough idea. And you can see what I ended with. I ended with this. So, you know, I'm pretty happy. I mean, there's a lot of dust lands in here. There's a lot of, it's all real detail that you're seeing in an M42 from a fairly quick, 2-minute exposure is a lot of time for a fast star system. There's a lot of detail here. There's a lot of stuff in here. And of course, with more careful programs, you can get more details and have some fun with your astrophotography. So, really happy with the SharpCap Live stacking. And with that, I'm going to close this session up and I can play it back on YouTube for some friends.